Nanette, let's start with you and with the City College of San Francisco. It's being threatened with losing its accreditation. This is huge. This is a campus with 90,000 students. How did this happen, and how are school officials responding?
Well, you know, this is really a story of good intentions gone very much awry, because California's master plan for higher education said that the community colleges in California are supposed to be open and accessible, free for everybody. And it was an idea that in San Francisco, the leadership just did not want to let go of. So even as the state has cut from the economic crisis millions of dollars from City College's budget, the school continued to operate, and does to this day, 9 campuses, 100 or even 200, they don't know how many, instructional sites.
They didn't make cuts.
They did not make cuts.
Funding cuts.
Exactly. They didn't shrink down because they didn't want to, because they love the kids. They love to, you know, provide education, and it was important to them. But in so doing, they abdicated the fiduciary responsibility that they needed to do.
And so this isn't a case of ill will or bad behavior or ethical problems. It was a case of someone wanting to do good for the students, but at the same time failing to keep up with the administrative needs that needed to happen.
And so what they did in 2006 was, we have this accreditation, which is a federally mandated process, and you're supposed to listen to what the accreditation report says or evaluators say. In 2006, they came and they said, look, you guys need to shrink down, you need to have better planning, you need to, even academically, you need to be able to say what your academic outcomes are in a more consistent manner. City College did not do that. Instead, they shrunk their administrators down to 39, and remember, it's 90,000 students, 39 administrators.
Not too many.
Not too many. So they don't have enough administrators. They just didn't do anything that the accreditation said 6 years ago, and now they came and they evaluated, and the problems have all, of course, gotten worse.
They didn't meet their fiduciary obligations.
Right.
I think David Lazarus actually has a question for you. David?
Yeah.
Well, Nanette, along these lines, we had a similar debacle down here in Southern California about 6 years ago when Compton College lost its accreditation. It, in turn, was taken over by El Camino Community College and became a satellite of that other one, which is a possibility for the San Francisco campus. And yet, since then, we've seen the same financial troubles that plagued Compton in the first place. And this year, we even had a grading scandal involved. Right. So does anyone think that any kind of rescue measure for San Francisco Community College could actually work?
Well, what's happening right now is that City College of San Francisco has until October 15th to provide an action plan. They're working on that. They are not listening to talk of closure. They are adamantly trying to save it. But everybody, and they have until March 15th actually to fix all of their problems, fix 6 years of problems in just 8 months. But they're looking to Compton College, which you mentioned, David, because it's the only school that had its accreditation yanked and therefore had to close. So as a result, that's the only model that we have. And as you said, another college came in. So what if that happened in San Francisco? If the accreditation were actually yanked, next June the commission would say that the school had to close, and the students might not actually notice a difference because somebody else might come in and take over leadership, change the academics. We would see a situation possibly similar to what happened in Compton.
And Nanette, does this mean something different for a student who's on a career path versus a San Francisco resident who just wants to take Spanish for personal enrichment?
So that's a really good question, because as we've said several times, it's a huge school. It will have to shrink. They know that. Even if the accreditation weren't yanked, we would not see this vast school. And so I think just 30,000 or so students take classes for credit. There's more who take licensing. Those would be the protected groups. Those who would no longer maybe, you know, we don't know exactly what it would look like, but least priority would be those students who just want to take the Spanish class or interesting course.
Well, let's talk about the larger picture, because this is not a problem confined to just City College of San Francisco. We're talking about education cuts across the board that have affected many colleges and universities. If this place closes, what does that say for the state of education? And are there other colleges in California facing this very similar dilemma?
Well, specifically facing accreditation problems, there's really only 2 small ones in the same position as City College of San Francisco. And one of them is in San Luis Obispo and one of them is in Eureka. But more interesting maybe to all students of community colleges is the fact that the master plan for higher education no longer really can apply to open access for all. And at this moment, the Board of Governors of community colleges are shrinking the mission. So every college is going to have to be focusing on students who really need to transfer to four-year schools and get a license, and we're shrinking down, and that's what we're going to see.
Well, it's not a good picture, that's for sure. I know you're going to stay on top of this. We will keep 2 dates in mind, October 15th, when they need to meet the deadline, showing how they'll make improvements. And then March 15th is when they face closure if they don't meet all the requirements.
That's the day.
All right, all right. Well, thank you, Nanette.